Thanks, Ashley. Calls for massive defaults on muni bonds have been made by some prominent analysts recently, pushing a few panic buttons in the market. Meredith Whitney of Meredith Whitney Group is just the latest. Take a listen.
There's not a doubt in my mind that you will see a spate of municipal bond defaults.
How many is a spate?
You could see 50 sizable defaults, 50 to 100 sizable defaults, more. This will amount to hundreds of billions of dollars worth of defaults.
Now, Meredith Whitney may be known by many to have called a financial crisis, but some people out there are saying this call on huge defaults in the muni bond market is just plain wrong. Charlie Gasparino has a special guest to break down the real story. Charlie.
Well, when I want to know about municipal bonds, I turn to one guy who's seen maybe not defaults, but yes, some defaults, but some real fiscal crisis and cities and states coming out of those crises. And that guy's name is Dick Larkin, major player at Standard & Poor's Corp, now working for the firm
Herbert J. Sims,
and an expert on the muni bond market. So you and I spoke the other day where you were pretty much somewhat outraged at what Meredith Whitney said in terms of the size and scope of municipal defaults.
When I saw 60 Minutes, I was spitting mad.
Spitting mad.
Spitting mad. To predict hundreds of billions of dollars of defaults in municipal bonds would be to make an assumption that we're going to have something worse than the Great Depression in the 1930s. If that's what she believes and that's what she's saying, she should say that.
So what you're saying is that her prediction is absurd?
I think the prediction is ludicrous. I think to say hundreds of billions of dollars of bonds, and let me put this in perspective. I know cities and states are having problems. They have budget deficits, but I've seen them perform through 6 recessions, and this recession is clearly the strongest and the worst since the Great Depression in the 1930s. And yet, I don't believe they're going to be wholesale defaults. I think to make predictions of hundreds of billions of dollars of defaults, not only ludicrous, I think it's irresponsible and damaging a lot of people's portfolio.
Now that's interesting you say that. Did prices react to her call?
Yes, but it's hard to say whether or not that was the only thing that affected prices. There was also something going on with what they call the Build America bonds, where municipalities would sell taxable bonds, but the federal government would subsidize it. That took a lot of volume out of the municipal bond market. Now that that's going to be ended, all of a sudden people are worried about supply. So there's a lot of supply coming back to the market, which is probably going to depress prices. So that already happened, but that's happening at the same time.
So she obviously didn't help.
She made it worse.
Well, and now let's unpack this a little bit. Why are municipal bonds important? Every major investor, I believe, owns a municipal bond because of the tax advantage.
There's $2.4 trillion of municipal bonds.
It's a huge market.
Most people probably invest in municipal bonds through municipal bond funds, but Herbert J. Sims, we deal with individual clients dealing with individual bonds, and they buy these bonds mainly for safety of income, safety, protection against principal default, and to provide for their living when they retire.
So now let's get back to her. And when an analyst of her note, now you remember Meredith Whitney. I remember I was at CNBC at the time back in 2007 when she called. She made major calls about the banks, particularly Citigroup. Said they were a capital problem. I will tell you that producers inside CNBC, major producers, laughed at her. They thought she was a nut. Okay, and I never did. I always thought she was very smart. She knew what she was doing. She was obviously right. But why isn't she right on this? I mean, listen, we have a recession. We have 9.8% unemployment. We have municipal coffers that are bleeding. Doesn't it make sense that there will be some amount of defaults?
There will be more defaults, but nothing coming close to hundreds of billions of dollars. When she said 50 to 100 defaults, I thought she's probably right on line. But then she said these are going to be big defaults.
Now
states defaulting, and that's where she's wrong.
That's the whole thing. California, I mean, she's obviously intimating. I mean, she didn't say
California's not going to default.
What are the chances of California default?
California chances of default are 1/10 of 1%. If they ever defaulted, in my belief, it would be because not that they couldn't pay their bills or maybe they can't pay their bills, but they'll pay debt service. If there was a default, it would probably be a technical type of thing where they're trying to manage cash, and all of a sudden they forgot to make this kind of payment. If there's a default in California, it would be short. So it would be short. Within days, it would be solved.
Okay, so the notion of big defaults, what you're saying is making that prediction is a reckless prediction, is what you're saying.
Charlie, I'm putting my career on the line by saying that ain't going to happen. Because you know what? If she's right, she'll be a hero, and I'll be out of business. I will not have a career. I put my career on. It ain't going to happen.
All right. You heard it here first. Meredith Whitney is wrong, and Dick Larkin says he's right. Guys, back to you.
Wow. Thanks, Charlie.